The first sheet Paul's going to put up for everyone to see. There we go. We have financing with tax issues. And I'd like to put this in perspective. Last year, the IRS penalized 6.8 million businesses to the tune of over $7 billion in tax fines and levies. The magnitude of tax issues with small businesses in America is astronomical. And in 2009, deep into the Great Recession, it was $9 million in tax problems with over 7 million small businesses with that issue. So the overhang of businesses with tax liens or unpaid taxes that a lien has not been filed by the IRS is huge. And it affects them in many different ways. Most banks, once they see unpaid taxes, cannot help them. By statute, SBA-backed loans, since an SBA is government-backed, you owe the government tax money, well, they're sure not going to help you borrow money. So SBA lenders can see a great deal, but if they see tax issues, then it's not going to happen. So the magnitude is great. That's one. So there's a universe of small businesses out there that need working capital, but the great majority of lenders can't help them. Two, they get a lot of bad advice. Very bad agreements, and they take too long. Probably 95% of the CPA firms and the tax attorneys that are advertising on TV that say they can negotiate with the IRS on their behalf don't have lending in mind. And what I mean by that is a prospect will talk to me or their intermediary or broker. We'll have a conversation, and I'll ask, well, can the people doing the work, the negotiation with the IRS, can they do a tri-party agreement? Can they do a subordination agreement? Because once that agreement's in place, if no lender, if you've not thought about a lender and their needs, then it's very difficult to get money even with that agreement in place. One of the things, and two terms I just used, which should be part of your vocabulary, are tri-party agreements, tri-party being between our client, the IRS, and Paragon, and two, subordination agreement, where the IRS will literally subordinate to Paragon, so we'll fund them. And also, typically, we can move a lot faster. Many times you'll see a number of 2, 3, 4 months or longer to negotiate with the IRS. And many times CPAs, lawyers, advisors are doing this, and it's not really their area of expertise. Or they're used to doing it with consumers, or they don't have to think about a lender. Paragon's different. Part of the resources we use is somebody that's negotiating with the IRS, knowing that they're going to get the IRS to subordinate and or a tri-party agreement between the IRS, our client, Paragon, and also very fast. Our people, if they think an agreement is coming or they can get one in place, will fund before the agreement is in place. We'll fund on their word. Another thing is, you probably wonder why we're able to do this. Why does the IRS look favorably on Paragon? Well, I'm going to use staffing companies. It's easy to get in tax issues and staffing because 90% of your invoice is going to make payroll and tax liabilities, workman's comp, and similar. If you take one hit, if somebody doesn't pay you for whatever reason, one of the first things that don't get paid is the taxes. So let's say somebody's got a $100,000 back tax bill or a tax lien in place. Well, 90% of the time, the IRS won't realize any of that money. But if Paragon is putting fresh capital, new capital into a client, and when we fund them on a weekly basis, a portion of that funding goes to the IRS. The IRS says, yeah, if we play ball with Paragon, there's a good chance we're going to get our 100 grand or 20 grand or 400 grand paid back. So smart agents at the IRS and our people who are talking to them who are ex-IRS agents, they can make sure this is a good thing for the IRS. This is a really good thing for our clients and prospects, and it's a good thing for Paragon too. The other thing, I mentioned SBA. So wherever you are in the country, there's a universe of SBA lenders, either part of a bank or unaffiliated with a bank. So a great referral source for you, besides the local bank branches, CPAs, lawyers, are SBA lenders. Because the minute an SBA lender hears the word back taxes, their hands are tied. So I would find every SBA lender in a 10-mile radius, 20-mile radius, depending how dense the population is where you live, and let them know that you have expertise in helping businesses get funded with tax issues. So, and once we get them set up, SBA loans, the 7A, you typically only get 20% advance against AR, so it's not a great vehicle to get money against the AR, and 10% against inventory. Oftentimes, as part and parcel of that SBA loan, they'll subordinate the AR to us so Paragon can fund, and we have agreements with SBA lenders now. So it's a wonderful marketing tool. The other thing I'd like you to think about is these tax issues go hand in hand with credit protection. I don't know, Paul, if you could put the non-recourse credit protection, maybe just URL or sheet up on the screen.
Okay.
Thanks, Paul. Why do many of these businesses, you can go down to the credit protection or the non-recourse. Why did many of these businesses have tax difficulty anyway, from 07 on? Because they took hits. Those that have listened to these before have heard me say, in life, there's only one thing worse than no sales, and that's selling it and not getting paid. You'd be better off staying in bed than to ship product to Linens and Things, Circuit Cities, General Motors before they filed bankruptcies, Radio Shack, and probably Sears and Kmart coming. So most of these companies have tax issues because they took a hit. Somebody didn't pay a sizable enough bill that it became a serious problem. So there we go. So part and parcel of tax issues many times is they took a hit. So besides needing help with their taxes so they can get funded and also get a great plan in place, I would anybody that ever take a hit, when we say we offer credit protection, and what do we mean by that? We have a sheet in the broker section just on this, but this one URL, the ParagonFinancial.net, and the blog, this blog about non-recourse factoring, what do we mean by that? Paragon Credit Insurers. We've had for a long time a credit insurance policy against our clients' customers, the account debtor in factoring lingo, excuse me a second, I thought I had my phone on mute, but apparently I did. There we go. Paragon has had a AR insurance policy a long time that, and it's not an insignificant investment, and probably less than 20% of ABLs and factors even qualify with a strong enough balance sheet. That if our clients' customers, the account debtors, as I said in factor lingo, If they file bankruptcy or go insolvent, what we advance plus our fees is covered. So a couple things. One, they get a free credit manager. Every prospect and client will get some kind of credit amount associated with each one of their customers. So for argument's sake, somebody who's selling to grocery stores will come and will say, yep, you have 100 grand in credit insurance on Publix, you have 100 grand in Kroger, you have 100 grand on Whole Foods, you have 200 grand on Trader Joe's, but that guy over there, I can't get credit insurance. You shouldn't sell him because I'm not going to fund the invoices. So it keeps them out of trouble. Two, with these policies in place, think about any of you that have had sales jobs in the past. If you could pre-approve the credit on 20 different prospects and then confidently go out that, hey, I know I can try to close these deals because our factor has credit insurance in place or can put it in place on these, then you can be prospecting on people with great credit and credit protection. So one, tax issues and credit protection, which we convey to our prospects with the accounts receivable insurance we have in place. It's a great tool, and I would sell the two of the tools together. And the definition of non-recourse factoring, remember this at Paragon, is if your account debtor, the customer's customer, files bankruptcy or goes insolvent. This page, it's a relatively long page. Paul, just drag it down a little bit more to the bullet points. I get this question from time to time. You can see, what if my customers just don't pay me? Well, think about your business. People typically don't pay you for a couple of reasons. One, there's financial difficulties. I'm going to take care of that. The second is typically performance. You know, I supply credit protection, working capital, and AR management. You know, we verify, yep, Walmart got the t-shirts, yep, we like them, yep, they're in the system, yep, we're going to pay you, Paragon. And then after our friendly verification, then we can do that. So it's not my job to make the t-shirts that they're purple when they're supposed to be green. But I can let people sleep at night and then leave their working capital needs. So any questions or comments about marketing your services around tax issues and credit protection? And I think that part of your screen dash on the right is on if anybody has any questions. Okay. You know, Paul, I think I'll let you do your part now, and then I'll come back and do mine thereafter, okay?
Okay. All right, great. How's everyone doing today? Let me go ahead and pull up my part. Okay, so what I did was I put together a list of really, I think, amazing tips that you'll be able to use in terms of researching your competition and just for your own personal use as well. Some of these are really powerful and some of them are just for fun, and they're all Google searches. So I really want you guys to be able to search like an SEO expert. And I bet there's several of these that you probably never heard of and you're going to get a lot out of. So the first one is using site, S-I-T-E : and then the website to be able to search within a website. So let's say you want to search invoice financing. This is the example for invoice financing within abfjournal.com. What you do is you can put it in whatever you want to search for within a website, put it in quotes, and Google's going to make sure that's an exact match. So anything that you put in the quotes, it's got to look for in that order, and you're going to be able to get your your rankings right here. So you could do that with competition. And again, it could be a really powerful tool. If you don't use any quotes, it's going to search for invoice and financing. So keep that in mind. Another really cool tool is define. So if you put define colon and then the term, you're going to get a definition of that term. And what's really interesting as well is Google is going to show you who it considers the authority for that particular keyword. So if you're ever doing research, factoring, financing, SBA loans, purchase order financing, whatever, you can put define colon. And if there's a term that you're not sure of, it really can come in handy. Something else that comes in really great is negative keywords. So let's say you're looking for financing for wine distributors, but you don't want a factor. So you can do financing wine distributor minus factoring, or minus factoring company, minus factor, minus accounts receivable financing, for example. And it's going to give you a list of results that contain financing wine distributor without the concept of factoring. And you can see here's the difference. So if I don't do the negative keyword, you can see the results are slightly different.
And just to chime in a second, you can see how well Paragon does. And by the way, Paragon is also businesscash.com. So financing wine distributors, Paul's setting in Central Florida right now, but probably the results are the same anywhere in all 50 states. We're 1 and 2, so this touches on how we attack specificity. We like our SEO is built around specific industries, specific problems like taxes, and also location.
Okay. Here's a fun one that if you ever don't have a calculator, if you need to do some quick math, all you have to do is do the calculation right into the Google search bar, and boom, you've got a nice little calculator. Here's another interesting one is file type. So let's say you want to look for a specific file type like a PDF, an Excel, a PowerPoint, a Word doc. And let's say you're researching invoice factoring or anything about financing, and boom, you can go ahead and search by file type and Google will give you that file type. And it's really going to give you some content and other types of information that you may not get otherwise if you just do a regular search under invoice factoring. Here's another cool one is, let's say you're traveling and you need to do a quick search for your flight. You don't have to go to the airline's website. Just put in flight, your number, the airline, and boom, Google's going to give it to you. Pretty neat. Another really handy research tool is the news. So I don't know how often you guys search specifically within the news category, but it can be really telling on who's talking about what, and you can sort by relevance, you can sort by the past week, the past day, the past month, and you can really get some fantastic information coming from that news category. And you can also set up alerts. So let's say you want to be able to find out all the news about factoring oil supplier daily, weekly, you can set that up and it's right in the Google interface. So if you search by news, it'll say set up an alert. It's pretty nice. Another thing that is really nice is searching for images. I'm sure everyone's searched for images. They want to use it on their marketing material, but in the back of their mind is it copyrighted? I mean, by default, most things are copyrighted. So if you just do a Google search and you find an image, you're probably not supposed to use it. So what's really neat about this particular technique is you can search, let's say, happy businesswoman, click on images, and then go to labeled for reuse. And you can go and you can filter by images that you're allowed to use. So really comes in handy.
Hey, Paul, Now you've got image brought up. Why don't you share with everybody how important images are when we do a blog or a landing page, that it's critical that you really get a bang for your buck, that you always have an image and how it's set up correctly.
Sure. Yeah, images for blogs or articles really help Google determine what that article is about. So if you're going to create an image and you want to name it, so let's say we're talking about non-recourse factoring, you want to name the image non-recourse-factoring.jpg. So that's going to really help Google see that your site and your page is relevant, and it's going to support the overall theme of the page. So keep in mind that Google's going through it and isn't necessarily going to be able to scan that image and see it and understand what that image is about. So it's important to name it properly. Okay, this is more of a power tip, but again, it's really interesting, is in title. So if you use in title colon, you're able to filter your results by just titles within a page. So again, you may not think of any direct applications this very moment, but keep it in your toolbox, and one of these days you might use it. This is something that that I came across recently. That's again, if you're doing research, could really come in handy, is you can search within physical newspapers. I'm not talking about online, but offline, regular, the newspapers that you hold. Google's got the ability to be able to go back and research newspapers. Really neat. So here's an example. So that's one of the results for invoice factoring right there. Newsprint. Pretty amazing. Something else that can come in really handy is or. If you you can search for two concepts at once. So you can do really a power search. So let's say you're looking for information on invoice factoring and purchase order financing. You can do or. So it's going to give you results that are going to include both. And again, you want to put it in quotes, because if you don't put it in quotes, it's going to search for each individual word. So if you don't put it in quotes, it would search for invoice and then factoring and then or and then purchase and then order and then financing, which you don't want. So make sure you use those quotes to get an exact match for what you're looking for. So another really handy tip is let's say you want it for a fun night, you're not really thinking right, and you can't figure out what 15%, 20% of your bill is. Boom, go to the Google search in your phone, type in what is a tip for 45 bucks, and you got it. So again, pretty neat. It's amazing what Google does and what Google provides. Yeah, another really amazing tip is, again, make sure you put it in quotes. But let's say you're looking for a term and you can't quite remember the entire term. You can use an asterisk and use that as a wildcard. So a wildcard is something that is open to any possibility. So what is blank plan financing? And Google is going to, obviously Google is very, very smart. So Google is going to give you suggestions. And in this case, it's exactly what I was thinking, was floor plan financing. So what is wildcard plan financing? And boom, it added it in there. So again, something really handy that you might be able to use. So finally, this is something that you're going to have to do on your own. Since it's a webinar, I don't think I can really show it to you perfectly, but this is pretty cool. So go ahead and when you guys got a chance, go to Google and type in "do a barrel roll" and watch what happens. It's a lot of fun. So check it out. So those are my tips for the Google search bar. So I hope everyone can use those. Keep them in your toolbox. Think about them. You can also Google tips and tips, and there's hundreds. There's just an absolute ton. So good luck, and let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah.
Hey, Paul, do me a favor. Just put a live Google search bar up,
Okay.
and just Google factoring.
And what would you like me to Google?
Factoring wine, since I'm going to talk about wine and spirits next. Oh, and while Paul's doing that, I think most of you saw, somebody asked me a good question. Why doesn't Paragon market directly to wine distributors? Well, most of the distributors are pretty big, financially solid companies. So our target is at the startup, small importers. One nice thing about being startup friendly, at the end of the day, invoice factoring and PO funding is all about the credit worthiness of the end customer. So they're selling the Total, they're selling the Trader Joe's, they're selling the Publix, they're selling the Sam's, they're selling the Costco. They have a good purchase order from a good client. These deals work backwards. And remember this, you can have factoring, you can have accounts receivable factoring without PO funding, but you can't have PO funding with accounts receivable factoring. So you can see, back to specificity, you type in factoring wine and we're kind of blessed. Paragon is 1, 2, are we any other besides that? Let's see. Hey, we are 1, 2, and so look, we're 6, because that's a business cash. That's our sister site, sister company, and you can see that was hard news. There was a press release talking about how well we're doing in the wine, and then 10 too is an older blogger it's a Google Plus, which Google likes since they own it. So I want to talk about wine a little bit. Paragon, we're trying to think forward. We can't be in the buggy whip business. There's been industries that go hot, and then they're all looking for working capital, and then for whatever happens, computer hardware is a great example. Margins were good. Everybody was looking for factoring and PO funding. The internet squeezed the margins under 10%. And another thing is, too, we typically can't fund a product if it's got margins of less than 10%. We only do 80% advance, and with fees and freights and return policies, we like to see a 20-30% gross margin. And we like to see an expanding business. And where you see an expanding business, you usually see entrepreneurs. So beer, wine, spirits, microbreweries, we love that business. We're doing scotch, tequila. We're doing bottles of wine anywhere from $3 to $3,000 a bottle, because there's every price point, there's every wine, and if a red goes out, well, then the white comes in. If a tequila goes out, then rum comes in. So we like spirits a lot. One of the things when you're out and about talking to your referral sources or prospects is convey that first bullet point. We understand the state-to-state laws of the beer and wine and spirits industry. Drinks with alcoholic content are typically under both state and federal law, and there's strict rules. Not everybody can import them, and you got to have your licensing in place. We're comfortable dealing with the licenses. We're also comfortable dealing with the distributors. The nice thing about wine, beer, and spirits is the great majority of the time, the account debtors, the end customers of our client, they have great credit. And the product turns fast too. Now, we've seen wine go putrid in a warehouse. I mean, if it gets hot, red wine turns to vinegar, and it's not worth the same. But we love the wine business. We like the spirits business. Also, hand in hand with this, the other point, and you don't have to switch this, Paul, but because of the strength of the U.S. dollar, the dollar is really strong now, which means as an importer, as a wholesaler, if you're looking to buy Spanish wines or French wines or Mexican tequila, the dollar is strong and has a lot of buying power. This is a great time. The rest of the world is on sale. We don't buy a lot of spirits out of China. We buy everything else. But it's a great time to buy goods out of China just because of the strength of the dollar versus their currency. Let's see. So, and we'll take chances. Our typical client is $25,000 to $2 million a month at Paragon, and we can go bigger with participation. If we think they can grow the business and they have the purchase orders in the pipeline, we'll take a chance on the wine business. There's a couple industries we don't mind starting with somebody smaller. Wine and spirits is one of those if we think they can grow the biz. Staffing is another one. A little staffing company doing 10 to 20,000 a month, there's a very good chance they could be doing 50 to 100,000 really quickly. So staffing, guard, IT programmers, wine and spirits are businesses where we will take chances. Any questions about funding for the wine and spirit industry? Oh, and the other point I want to make is SBA lenders love wine and spirits, but they love doing the land and the buildings and the equipment. Again, they're not very strong on inventory, POs, and the accounts receivable. So we've partnered a couple of times with SBA lenders where they've done the building, land, and equipment, and they've carved out the AR so we can do that. So, any questions about wine or spirits? Okay. Why don't you flip me to the import sheet, Paul?
Okay. Chris, we do have a couple questions.
Oh, okay. Well, I answered a couple, but
okay.
Let's see.
What is the minimum and maximum for the wine industry? And what is the competition in lending or factoring in this field?
We typically like clients 25,000 to 2 million a month. Which, if you're importing wine, if you're doing less than 25,000, it's really not a business; it's a hobby. And two, there's some banks, especially in California, that specialize in the wine business. But I think we're a factor with 20 years of expertise in spirits in general. So we typically, any wine deal we want, we typically win.
Okay.
Is there any questions about while we stop taxes and/or wine? Okay. Yeah, let's go to the import.
Okay.
All right, thanks, Paul.
Sure.
Import financing goes hand in hand with the wine business, but everything. You walk through a Walmart, you walk through a Kohl's, you go online, Amazon, Groupon, Zappos, just fill in the blanks. Many of those goods were imported, and the strong dollar. This is wholesalers, importers, jobbers, resellers. This is a good area for all y'all to market into. We're seeing it, and for 20 years, right now, everybody I answered, that I mentioned, Walmart, Zappos, Amazon, some of the other online retailers. We love getting paid by them. And we're comfortable with the online portals and to verify the invoices that way. So, and we're doing some neat stuff. Um, if you look up and down yourself, from shoes to hats to everything in between, we like funding that. And we love edibles, Spanish wines, olives. I just Before I got on this, I was Skyping with somebody bringing organic meat into the U.S. to some very good debtors. So it is a great time to be known as a funder of importers. And you'll see. Paul's got pulled up on the screen who it benefits: importers, exporters, factorings. In the first paragraph, you see cash against documents funding. Click on that for me, Paul. Okay. I would recommend that those dang chats pop up. So, but some people ask me, Chris, why do you? On a little side point here, Chris, why do you relentlessly have the chat pop up every time we go to a screen? Well, I tell them, I want to educate people, but I'm not a library. We're here to sell factoring. So, and that's a little bit of a joke. But the nomenclature, the language of import and trade, cash against docs, documents against payments, FOB. Paul's even built us a nice little chart if you go down a couple of inches on this sheet. The verbiage of logistics and how to understand and do it in a cost basis. One of the sheets, hey, Paul, will you go to the broker page for me?
Sure.
Thanks. And then when you go to the broker page, Paul, go down to the list of all the forms and tools you can download. Yeah, just go down slightly to the list. Okay, in the middle there, you'll see purchase order financing versus invoice factoring. That's a good sheet. That talks about the difference and how they work together, and also the cost. We like accounts receivable financing because we can verify that the customer's happy, that the goods meet quality, quantity, and timeliness. We don't mind doing vendor guarantees and cash against docs. Go back to the cash against docs sheet.
Okay.
Letters of credit can be a little bit problematic right now. One, it used to be standard operating procedure. You're buying goods from China. The Chinese would ask you to put up a letter of credit. They could borrow against it with their local bank. The financial difficulties in China right now, the small or medium manufacturers, it's difficult for them to monetize a letter of credit. They're having trouble borrowing against them. So they're not quite as user-friendly. And letters of credit's not inexpensive. You can be 4 or 5% just to write a letter of credit, which will quickly eat up your margins. Factoring, which is, let's say, 1 to 2% a month, including credit protection based on monthly volume. Somebody doing 20,000 a month is going to pay more than somebody doing $1 million a month. But let's say factoring, including credit protection, is 1 to 2% per 30 days. Cash against docs, a vendor guarantee where we guarantee payment to the vendor out of factoring proceeds, it might be 0.5 point, and that's 0.5 point on the payment going to the vendor or the manufacturer, not based on the invoice generated to Walmart. A cash against documents, which is basically and preferably FOB the U.S. versus FOB China, where they present the proper documentation that quality, quantity, timeliness, bill of lading, inspection certificates. They present the documentation and then they get paid. it might be 2 to 3%, depending on whether it's FOB China or FOB the U.S. While a letter of credit can be 4 and 5%. And letters of credit doesn't make sense on small amounts. We're on 25, 50,000 vendor guarantees and cash against docs. Go back to that sheet a second, Paul.
Which sheet?
The sheet invoice factoring versus PO funding. It's the PDF that was in the broker.
Oh, okay. I got to open that one up.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry. I should have had you open that one. But just go back to the broker. Just go back to the broker sheet.
Okay.
That's fine. You don't have to open the PDF. Yeah, perfect. The about 7 bullets down, where it says purchase order financing versus invoice factoring. Yeah, don't open that, Paul. It might take too long. But read that sheet, understand that sheet. The summary, the summation, the last sentence or two of that sheet says, hey, your goal in life is to get your manufacturing client, vendor, whoever you're buying the goods from, to resell to somebody else. Get them comfortable with the vendor guarantee. You're doing 100,000 to $1 million a month in sales, which is a typical client for Paragon. You can have factoring, credit protection, AR management, a full-time credit manager, pre-approved all years, unlimited D&Bs, and vendor guarantees back to your supplier, all for 1.5% to 2% per 30 days. So you can have a soup to nuts back office. You just go out and sell and get POs from good people, and we can take care of the cash flow and making your vendor happy and confirming that the invoices are in the accounts payable department of your big clients. So, okay. So we talked about taxes. We talked about credit protection, which goes hand in hand. We talked about the growing wine, spirit, and brewery business, which I would hit hard wherever you are, because even if you're in a state that doesn't have wineries, people are importing stuff like crazy. Drinking habits are changing, and if you Google that, it'll tell you all about it, but we're trying to stay in the forefront of that. And then hand in hand with wine and spirits is importing, and how that's I don't see the dollar getting any weaker anytime soon, especially the place where wine and spirits come from. So is there any questions? Because I've run out of things to talk about, unless people have questions, and we can open it up.
Alex has a question. Why is there little competition for wine factoring?
Well, I think it's some of the law. I mean, the banks are heavily into funding wineries, but unless you're really comfortable with the wine and spirits laws on a state and local and national basis. So, there's other factors that probably enjoy the business, but we've been doing it for 20 years, so we've got people in-house who know all the laws that it falls under. Similar to our government. You'll notice there's some government-only factors out there, and there's people like us that love government receivables. Again, for 20 years, we've been dealing with the FAR, so we love wine and we love government. Any other questions? Maybe to wrap up, do you have another SEO web tip? One thing, before I got on, some of you had, there's a couple of y'all that wanted some help with your websites, and some have websites, some don't. But one tip I'll give you is locality specificity. Be the go-to person in your geographical area, and I would hammer your site on that, because when people type in factoring Wichita, factoring Fort Lauderdale, factoring San Diego, factoring pallets, factoring wine, factoring with tax issues, business financing with tax issues, we hit the specificity and the locality hard of where we want our business to come from. But Paul, you got a little tip you'd like to leave everybody with about SEO and web?
Well, the biggest thing that I see that Google has changed is they're not obsessed with keywords anymore. They're more obsessed with concepts. So when you're going to write an article, when you're going to write a blog or anything on the web, even a social media post, don't get too obsessed with the word invoice factoring or different individual keywords. Just you have to create good content that has meaning. Google's got the ability to look at content now and see the meaning behind it, not just the keywords. So I find that really important. And also, Chris, Alex has another question. Do you factor construction for government contractors?
Well, it depends. If it's progress pay and paid when paid and retention, no. But we get a lot of those leads, and we refer them out. There's 3 or 4 construction factors that do that. There's some construction, if they're going in and it's one job, and depending on the quality of the prime and the size of the prime. But some we do, but progress pay, retention, and pay when paid, no. But I'm cheerfully sending to somebody who does like that. Any other questions?
Go.
There's another one. Do you focus on factoring in the do you focus on funding trucking logistics industries? We used to be a trucking factor, but to be honest, there's just factors, that's all they do. The advance rates are crazy high, the margins are crazy low, and there's lots of little invoices. We have well-trained, well-paid people verifying invoices. We'd prefer to verify $1,000, $10,000, $50,000 invoices. So we're not great at $50, $100, $300. There's the Rivieras of the world, people like that, the Tab Bank. There's a multitude of people that all they do is trucking. So we we do some trucking, but it's more for the oil, fracking, sand, things like that. We have industries we like. The next one's kind of for you. Have you made a URL that would go from our site to yours? Yeah, Paul and I talked about that. Paul would have you give you a logo with the code in it, so that we get contacted when they come from you to us, so we know it's your lead. You see that last question, Paul?
Yeah.
So those that interested and have a Paragon logo that you could click on and it would go to our site, but we knew it came from you, just email us, and Paul or our programmers could give you one with the right code so you would get credit. Okay. Well, thanks for everybody's time. Any other quick questions before we hit the stop button here? One more. What's that say, Paul?
Yeah, Alex is interested in the code as well.
Oh yeah. Well, we love IT. We like programmers, IT staffing, but if it's a purchase order to do work, that's a nice piece of paper, but until you've done the work, it's a worthless piece of paper. So if it's a service, it's all how the contract reads. Every time we see an IT company, programmers, web, advertising, we get a copy of the contract and we see, okay, are you just getting paid for time? Great. Is there milestones? That's a little tougher. If it's a mobilization draw where you want to get paid that you've done nothing, that's tough too. So again, when it comes to IT services, they're a big part of our portfolio now is IT programmers and the like. But it has to be on work completed or no assets been created for us to fund against. Any more questions? Well, great. Thanks for everybody's time today. We hope you have a great Friday and a great weekend. And if you have anything follow up, I'm just Chris at ParagonFinancial.net, but you'll find me on the broker page. And those interested in a Paragon logo for their site, where people could click and come to us and we know it's from you, just let me know that too. And have a great Friday. Thank you.